way. Here we go. Why is Lando Norris already under investigation? Oh, that is a good point. Failing to follow race directions instructions, maximum delta time. I think that might be left over from qualifying. Because nothing was come of it. So whatever it was. Maybe it was the lap to the grid, possibly. But they've already looked at it and no penalties given. So don't worry. Don't worry. Here we go then. 50 laps under the Las Vegas lights between us and seeing who comes out on top here. Will it be Lando Norris to elongate his lead at the top of the championship once more? Will it be Max Verstappen, the man who's been so consistent during this ground effect era and just about keeping himself within championship contention? Could it even be Carlos Sainz, Ferrari's most recent race winner? Could he become Williams' most recent race winner as well? He starts from P3. Or will it be George Russell going back-to-back in Vegas? They are our top four going into it. Oscar Piastri just behind in 5th place. Championship contender, the closest man to Lando Norris. But starts 4 positions adrift of his teammate in this one. Who do we think? Get your predictions in. Who will win this Las Vegas Grand Prix? McLaren have never finished inside of the top 5 here. It's going to be tight, isn't it? As Lando Norris comes to a stop at the front of the grid. Max Verstappen joining him. Oh, just going to move that very quickly. And it's going to be... I'm feeling tense. I don't know if you can tell. I'm feeling a little bit tense. I'm worried about turn 1. I'm worried about the lack of grip that these cars are going to have, if I'm honest with you. It is going to be a very, very green track after the rain yesterday. It's already one of the slipperiest circuits on the calendar, with the cool weather conditions being so late at night in the Vegas desert. And it's just going to be so tense. Lewis Hamilton, the final driver to take their grid spot. And the medical car, of course, taking its position. Green flag is waved and 5 red lights stand between us and the start of the Las Vegas Grand Prix. We get underway and Lando Norris comes across to defend from Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen coming up the inside. Lando Norris nearly putting Verstappen into the wall, but Lando Norris goes deep into the corner. That's going to open the door for Verstappen to go up the inside, and Verstappen takes it. Verstappen up inside of Lando Norris, and Norris now struggling to fight with George Russell. Carlos Sainz has fallen to 4th place, and George Russell has also taken advantage of Lando Norris's poor start to the Grand Prix, and George Russell is in, and George Russell is up into 2nd place. Carlos Sainz has dropped down to 4th. Both of the RBs causing a nightmare situation for Piastri. Hadjar and Lawson have jumped ahead of Oscar Piastri in this one. Piastri down to 7th. Ollie Behrman with an incredible start up into 8th place. Fernando Alonso and Charles Leclerc still inside of the points, though, in 9th and 10th, respectively. Hulkenberg has been the only man, I think, able to maintain position in 11th. Ocon up to 12th. Hamilton is all the way up into 13th place already for Ferrari. Albon up into 14th. Colapinto and Tsunoda dropping down the order. Gasly down into 18th place, started 10th. Bortoletto down into 19th. 20th place for Lance Stroll. There must have been some kind of collision or touch between them, because Lance Stroll has also come to a stop out on track between turn 5 and turn 6, or at least according to my screen. Might have been Bortoletto and Stroll once again who have met one another. It's a yellow flag conditions. And there's a big amount of damage actually on Liam Lawson's front wing. So there's also been some kind of contact between the RB car and somebody else, possibly Charles Leclerc and Fernando Alonso involved in that too. Fernando Alonso getting outdone by Charles Leclerc, and Leclerc up into 9th place. The marshals out on track, double waved yellows down in towards turn 1 still. And there is some debris there between turn 1 and turn 2. But Max Verstappen leads, and Lando Norris was very aggressive, came over to the left-hand side of the track to try and defend from Max Verstappen very early on, like just shifted across. Max Verstappen nearly punted into the wall because of it. But then Lando Norris went in way too hot in towards turn one. I think he was thinking too much about Max Verstappen and not enough about his braking point. Way too hot into turn one. Went super wide. Lost the... Oh, and then Liam Lawson's front wing. That damage to the front wing is still hanging on, and Liam Lawson's going to have to pit with that, surely, because a bit of the front wing has now lodged itself underneath the RB car, and there's now some smoke coming off the back of that RB as well, I think, because of that damage done to the front wing and floor of Liam Lawson's car. He's going to start to fall down the order. Tsunoda has pitted, so has Pierre Gasly. Oh, no, sorry, Gabriel Bortoleto. And Tsunoda and Bortoleto deciding virtual safety car is then pulled out. And I think that is the right decision, really. There's a lot of debris on the track at various points now. And everybody has to slow down to that 40% virtual safety car speed. Charles Leclerc was just getting up alongside Ollie Behrman for 7th place. But not doing it this time around. Charles Leclerc back up into 8th place now. It was a tough start for Charles Leclerc. I would love to see the replay. I was looking at the front runners, of course. Let's see a replay of the start then, where Lando does come across to cover Verstappen very early on. Goes in very deep. But let's see what happens behind. Oh, my goodness. Liam Lawson, big contact with Oscar Piastri. That was why. Banging wheels, Oscar Piastri and Liam Lawson. So possibly even some damage done to Piastri's car that we'll need to see what happens there. And Lando Norris then caught by George Russell as well because of where he'd situated the car through turn 1 and turn 2. I think Lando's just thinking way too much about Verstappen there. And misses the braking point by a considerable margin. Is sent off into the runoff. And Verstappen then just sweeps up the inside and takes that position from him. Max Verstappen up into lead in this Grand Prix. Here's a replay from Gabriel Bortoleto's position. What happened to the Brazilian? He had a pretty tough start to proceedings. Kimi Antonelli. Oh, and then actually Gabriel Bortoleto just goes straight into the side of Lance Stroll. That's a big mistake from Gabriel Bortoleto, really. Again, just misjudges the braking point. I think a lot of these drivers struggling with the fact that the track is so green and there's no grip up the inside in towards turn 1. Bortoleto, big lockup, smashed into the side of Stroll, which then causes chaos behind. I think picks up Pierre Gasly or possibly Franco Colapinto. It's all went wrong for those drivers that got caught up in the Bortoleto chaos. Bortoleto then pits for a second time, and I think that's going to be Bortoleto out of this Grand Prix. Lance Stroll also came to a stop between turn 5 and turn 6 and never got going again. So Bortoleto and Stroll look to be out after that collision at turn 1. Oscar Piastri is now 6th place running. Was down to 7th, but Liam Lawson had to come in and change his front wing. He's now dropped behind Tsunoda and Gasly at the back of the pack. And this is absolute chaos as Piastri and Lawson under investigation now. I'm sure Bortoleto will be under investigation momentarily as well. And the track is clear, and we're going to go racing once again. Here we are then. Max Verstappen gets us back going. Towards turn 5 he goes. It is Verstappen, Russell, Norris, our top 3. Carlos Sainz has fallen just outside of that top 3 now into 4th spot. Isaac Hadjar sitting 5th place behind the Williams car. And is within touching distance. DRS, of course, will be enabled once again. And we'll start to see some DRS overtaking maneuvers. I'm sure some drivers cannot wait to go down the inside of turn 14. See what they can do, particularly this man here, Charles Leclerc, fighting with Ollie Behrman for 7th place, is within half a second of the Haas. Could be possible Ferrari teammates in the future. We've seen Ollie Behrman really come to life in the last few races inside of that Haas car. Has been absolutely flying as of recent races, but Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari already surely has the pace advantage over the Haas this weekend. Max Verstappen leads by 1.3 seconds to George Russell behind. Lando Norris has dropped to third place. And Charles Leclerc has a little look at Ollie Behrman, but not able to do it this time around in towards turn 14. Stays where he is. And Charles Leclerc slotting in behind still. Verstappen then is going to come up to the line, start lap 5 of this Grand Prix. Fastest laps are going to tumble because of the virtual safety car that we have had. See what kind of pace everybody really has. We haven't had a clean lap of racing yet, so although Fernando Alonso currently holds the fastest lap of the race, it's not really what the lap times will end up being for a lot of these cars. For any of these cars. And there you are. Bortoletto also being investigated for that crash into Stroll. Colapinto also being noted as well. So it must have been Colapinto that was the... I don't know, though, because Gasly is down in 17th place then. What happened to Gasly? I thought Gasly was the Alpine that was pointing the wrong way. Alex Albon running in 13th place now. Having a little look at his pace. Yuki Tsunoda, currently the fastest man out on track. Now let's see what the lap times really go. Here we are then. Ollie Behrman under pressure from Leclerc. Going down the race strip once again. George Russell closing in on the back of Max Verstappen. Gets that slipstream, of course, down this really long back straight and getting within touching distance. And here comes Charles Leclerc, Ollie Behrman. And Behrman doesn't have too much of a defense, really. Charles Leclerc, really lovely move up the inside towards turn 14. Puts his Ferrari right on the apex of the corner. Ollie Behrman doesn't have much rebuttal to that. And Ollie Behrman has to concede the position to, as I say, his possible future Ferrari teammate, Charles Leclerc. But Behrman's going to come back at him. And Behrman has a little look down towards turn 1. Leclerc, though, holds on to 7th place for now. George Russell, then, the fastest man out on track at the moment. We finally get to see some real lap times from these drivers. It was a 136.9 from George Russell. Fernando Alonso also now closing into the back of Ollie Behrman. Behrman opportunistic, got up into the point scoring places after the start went wrong for a lot of the drivers ahead of him, but now realizing maybe that Haas just hasn't quite got the pace of the real points runners this weekend. Under pressure from Fernando Alonso now is Ollie Behrman, and Fernando Alonso gaining. It's an ominous look in your mirrors, isn't it, when you see a Fernando Alonso getting closer and closer. Max Verstappen will also be seeing George Russell getting closer and closer as the DRS is open for George Russell once again. Gets the slipstream from Max Verstappen. Has a little look at the rear end of the Red Bull from just a closer angle this time around as George Russell. It's going to be about half a second between the two of them as they come towards the start-finish line once again. This is the thing now, though. The Mercedes car is just running out of straight as they get to turn 1. Needs to be a lot closer than that, does George Russell. Was 0.7 of a second behind Max Verstappen before they got into the DRS zone. Got to within sort of 0.3 or so into turn 14. But let's see if George Russell can get a little bit closer to Verstappen through this middle part of the lap and possibly even put together a challenge for the lead of this race. George Russell is the closest man to Verstappen. Lando Norris has actually fallen away a touch. Remember, the McLaren cars have never finished inside of the top 5 here. So Lando Norris still on the podium places for now, but is 2.6 seconds adrift of this battle for the top step of the podium that we've got. As Max Verstappen does go 0.3 of a second quicker than Russell through the first sector. And that's where Russell is really struggling, because by the time they get to the stronger sector for the Mercedes car, Verstappen has already got George Russell at arm's length. They're 0.8 of a second apart as they enter the DRS zone. George Russell's going to have the DRS and the slipstream. He's going to close into the back of the Red Bull, but not the same way as he was last time around, and gets only to within about half a second of Verstappen this time. But as I was saying, Lando Norris has fallen away from that top two just a touch, maybe holding onto his tyres a tiny little bit more than the front runners, or possibly this is just the pace of the McLaren car. We know that they do struggle under these conditions, and Lando Norris in third place, nearly 3 seconds adrift. Carlos Sainz then another 2.5 seconds back from that. Isaac Hadjar, the next driver within DRS range. He is putting Carlos Sainz under pressure, but Oscar Piastri also struggling 1.7 seconds adrift of Hadjar. So Piastri not even within DRS range of the two midfield cars ahead of him. And actually Charles Leclerc has dispatched Ollie Behrman and is closing into the back of Oscar Piastri. No further action for that collision between Lawson and Piastri at the start of this Grand Prix. Lawson bumping wheels with Piastri. It was a very, very opportunistic move, I would say, from Liam Lawson. Ended up damaging his car more than Piastri's, though. So maybe the stewards have taken that into account a little bit. And the fact that Liam Lawson is currently running last of the drivers still in the race. Bortoletto and Lance Stroll, the two DNFs so far. Verstappen is able to really run away from George Russell in that first sector. George Russell not even getting DRS this time around. That first sector, Verstappen is so much stronger than the Mercedes car. And I think the Mercedes is just going to have to hope that the Red Bull struggles a little more on these medium tyres. Completed 7 laps of the race on them. A lot of people expecting just the one-stop strategy here, going from the medium tyre onto the hard compound tyre. But then the hard compound tyre pace hasn't been incredible. Nico Hülkenberg, the first driver to start on the hard compound tyre. He's in 10th place at the moment. I suppose he is holding on to the back of Ollie Behrman and Fernando Alonso, so we don't know what his pace would be like in clean air. Then the hard compound tyres also for Lewis Hamilton, Alex Albon, Franco Colapinto. Kimi Antonelli decided to pit very early on, so did Yuki Tsunoda. Gasly and Lawson had to pit to fix his front wing. Interesting that Kimi Antonelli has done that. Started on the soft compound tyre, Kimi Antonelli swapped onto the hard compound tyre very early on. Is now catching up to the back of Franco Colapinto for 14th place. Keep an eye on the Italian, because he is going to dictate what George Russell really does later on in this Grand Prix. Surely they're using Kimi Antonelli as almost a little bit of a guinea pig to decide which tyres are best on the Mercedes car. They've got the medium on George Russell, the hard compound tyre on Kimi Antonelli. Max Verstappen stronger in Sector 2 once again, now starting to elongate that lead away from George Russell. Now that he's broken that DRS, George Russell really struggling to hold on to the back of the Red Bull car, particularly through that first and second sector. Makes up a little bit of the time through the third sector because gets the slipstream, but without DRS, it's not enough to really keep within contention. And the Red Bull's starting to come away from him. Lando Norris still 3 seconds adrift of George Russell. And then Carlos Sainz another 3 seconds back from that. Fernando Alonso inside the Aston Martin, just struggling with the fact that Aston Martin doesn't have the best of straight line pace, as the Ferrari of Lewis Hamilton is being hunted by Alex Albon, the Williams car, catching up to the back of the Scuderia fairly comfortably. And Albon sitting half a second adrift of Lewis Hamilton. Let's see here. We could possibly see Alex Albon make a move for 12th place and Lewis Hamilton drop down a position. Not even inside of the point scoring places yet. Lewis Hamilton already struggling in this traffic. There is a bit of a train behind Ollie Behrman. Behrman, Alonso, Hülkenberg, Ocon, Hamilton, and Albon all within DRS range. Alex Albon closing in. Franco Colapinto also under pressure from Kimi Antonelli on this lap. But all outside of the points at the moment. Charles Leclerc, the closest competitor inside of the top 10 to Oscar Piastri ahead. Isaac Hadjar also has DRS to Carlos Sainz, but hasn't been able to cause the Spaniard any real trouble as of yet. The Racing Bull still looking very strong, though. Both of them will be hoping that Verstappen and Russell take themselves out. Could be a double podium on for the midfield drivers. Carlos Sainz and Isaac Hadjar closest to the podium positions. Antonelli then makes the move into the chicane and up ahead of Franco Colapinto as Antonelli up into turn 14, makes his move up the inside. And there we are. Antonelli moves ahead and up into 14th place. Has already pitted Kimi Antonelli. So if he can gain and get towards the back of this Behrman Alonso Hulkenberg train, then actually could be in a very strong position. As long as those tyres don't fall off a cliff for him. Doesn't need to pit again. Maybe these hard compound tyres can just go all the way to the end. Can he do 50 laps on them? And Charles Leclerc pushing hard inside of that Ferrari car, trying to get close to the back of Oscar Piastri. He is pushing like an animal, he says. Ooh. Charles Leclerc is actually within DRS range of Piastri sometimes. He's pushing very, very hard. He's on the medium tyre, Charles Leclerc, so does need to be just a little bit careful that he doesn't absolutely kill that. Ooh, and Kimi Antonelli is now under investigation for a possible false start. There's a few investigations ongoing. Bortoleto and Stroll is going to be investigated after the session because both of those cars now out of the race. Kimi Antonelli, though, false start moving before the signal is now going to be investigated. That's usually a pretty slam dunk penalty. It's the Italian likely... Ooh. Let's make sure to be aggressive, guys, says Isaac Hadjar on the radio, knowing that Oscar Piastri has now joined the fight behind him. Hadjar has fallen outside of DRS range to Carlos Sainz ahead. And now Hadjar under pressure from Piastri behind. Albon then, starting procedure infringement as well. And Franco Colapinto is that incident involving Bortoleto and Stroll. I don't think he was a bit of a bystander in that, though. Franco Colapinto just got caught up in it. But both Antonelli and Albon have got starting procedure possible penalties coming their way. Interesting that they've decided to look into that 20 minutes into the Grand Prix and 12 laps down, but they're getting to it, are the stewards. And here comes Charles Leclerc, the animal behind the wheel of the Ferrari. He's a prancing horse underneath him. And the horse is going to go for a move, goes to the right-hand side of the track. Oscar Piastri, sparks are flying between the Ferrari and the McLaren. The McLaren can't live with it. Charles Leclerc moves up into 6th place. And Piastri, our championship contender, now down into 7th place. Lando Norris has also just put in the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. So has Lando Norris been holding onto his tyres a touch, possibly? Just letting George Russell and Max Verstappen fight ahead of him, and now is coming back into contention. It's moved to within 2 seconds of George Russell ahead, was fairly consistently 3 seconds off George Russell. Now moving closer. So only a 1/10 of a second quicker that last lap, Lando Norris, but getting closer nonetheless. And Isaac Hadjar now under pressure from Charles Leclerc. Leclerc really using the pace of that Ferrari to his advantage today. Qualified down the order because of the wet weather conditions, knew that there was pace inside of the Ferrari car. We saw it in the free practice sessions. Lewis Hamilton said a similar thing. And Hamilton, though, unfortunately stuck in a bit of a DRS train, although Esteban Ocon has dropped outside of that DRS range of Nico Hülkenberg ahead. So let's see if Lewis Hamilton can gain 11th place. And Lando Norris has just dropped outside of 2 seconds once again. Maybe just a strike of lightning there from Lando Norris. But not quite on the pace still. Isaac Hadjar Under pressure from Leclerc. Let's see if Leclerc can go for it. And Isaac Hadjar can't live with Charles Leclerc. Leclerc goes up the inside, and Leclerc, another great move into turn 14. And Charles Leclerc absolutely not holding back this afternoon in Las Vegas. He is flying inside of that Ferrari car. Just worried about those tyres a touch as Max Verstappen then rebuttals with a fastest lap of his own to Lando Norris. Norris still 2 seconds adrift of George Russell. Didn't make up any time that lap and actually lost a second. Isaac Hadjar under pressure now from Piastri. And George Russell having that same problem with the steering once again. It was a problem that cost him in qualifying. It was a problem that he said he should have been on pole position in terms of the pace that was inside of that Mercedes car up until Q3, where it fell away because of that steering problem. George Russell. Oh, and Lewis Hamilton running wide at turn 12. Oh. And I think Lewis Hamilton has caused damage there. Hamilton passes Albon once again. I think there's damage there to the Ferrari car, though. Hamilton made a mistake whilst battling with Ocon, and then there's debris actually on the track down towards turn 14. Might be another safety car or virtual safety car again to get that moved out of the way. Wouldn't surprise me. Just got it wrong, did Lewis Hamilton, looking at the replay. Albon and Hamilton fighting for that position. And Alex Albon then actually deciding to pit and get out of that traffic. So Albon onto the medium tyre now and down into 18th place. A little bit early for a pit stop, but makes sense considering the circumstances he found himself in. Ooh. That is a 5-second time penalty for Kimi Antonelli then. Moving before the lights went out. It's a pretty slam dunk penalty, unfortunately, if you do, get going before the signal actually drops. 5 red lights, just got a little bit too excited, went a little bit early. And gets a 5-second penalty for doing so. Kimi Antonelli currently running in 13th place anyway. Unfortunately, that Lando Norris pace seems to have ebbed away a touch. Max Verstappen now finding the pace at the front in that clean air ahead. Norris within 2 seconds of George Russell once again, but not really closing the gap to George Russell much. And Oscar Piastri is actually the driver getting close to the rear end of the Racing Bulls of Isaac Hadjar. Isaac Hadjar now in 6th place, was running behind Carlos Sainz for a good chunk of time until Charles Leclerc arrived. Leclerc now chasing his old teammate Carlos Sainz for a possible run at a podium. Lando Norris ahead in 3rd. And there is a virtual safety car. Just trying to find that gap, and that's surely for the debris that is at the end of the straight down towards turn 14. I think need to get that piece of debris off of the track there, because you're just not going to be able to overtake, because you're going to pull to the inside of the track and then you're going to run over a piece of carbon fiber. There you go. And the stewards have indeed thrown the virtual safety car. The marshals are out, picked up a piece of front wing, making a run for it. Alex Albon is the next driver to come around turn 13. Get off the track. Very quick. But let's hope that the virtual safety car comes out at the right time then. Alex Albon has come back around. See the Antonelli false start. Oh my. It's marginal. I mean, it's not a very good start, but supposedly a jump start. And Verstappen, Russell, and Norris now come towards turn 14. And here comes Oscar Piastri. Piastri making a move on Isaac Hadjar as the virtual safety car comes to a close. And Piastri using the DRS and the advantage of the McLaren car. And up into 6th place once again is Oscar Piastri. And now gets to hunt down Charles Leclerc ahead, although Leclerc made his way past these two fairly comfortably. Piastri needs to hope that Charles Leclerc's burned through the rubber of those medium tyres. And he's going to get... It's a very, very marginal penalty for Kimi Antonelli, but a penalty nonetheless. Hamilton and Albon now under investigation for that collision between the pair. And DRS is indeed once again enabled. And, Fernando Alonso decided to pit, but pitted once the virtual safety car had ended, so didn't get that advantage over the rest of the field. Maybe would have pitted anyway, but had he got that virtual safety car advantage when everybody else was going slowly, that would have been a beautiful little time for Fernando Alonso to get that pit stop done. Everybody else remains on the tyres they started. Kimi Antonelli, the highest ranked driver who has pitted, but everybody inside of the top 10 yet to stop. Lewis Hamilton now catching up to the back of Esteban Ocon. Hulkenberg up into 9th place as well and just trying to keep his nose clean, I think. And in comes George Russell. Into the pits comes George Russell. So one of the front runners does decide to do it. Maybe they're seeing the pace of Kimi Antonelli's hard compound tyres and going sooner is better than later. George Russell, the first of the front runners to blink. Where does he come out? They found a nice gap between Hadjar and Hulkenberg to get him out into, I think so. As Lando Norris then puts in the fastest lap of the race so far. And that's why they've pitted George Russell then, as Ollie Behrman also decides to pit. So you can see George Russell has come out, just coming around turn 4 now, between Hadjar and Hulkenberg. Has a little bit of space to run into, does George Russell. Doesn't want to be stuck in that traffic behind Hulkenberg, to be fair. You know, there was Behrman, Hulkenberg, Ocon, and Hamilton all sitting in a DRS train. George Russell did not want to come out behind that, so has come out in the right spot. And Lando Norris saying on the radio, the clean air is miles better. And Lando Norris now being able to properly step on the throttle. 3 seconds behind Max Verstappen in 2nd place now, but George Russell has pitted. Lando Norris still needs to stop, and it's where will Lando Norris come out if he does decide to come in. Looks like he's continuing on for another lap, though. And George Russell on the hard compound tyre. See what lap times he can put in as well. Verstappen still leads. Lando Norris 2nd. George Russell has pitted down in 7th place now. Carlos Sainz then inherits 3rd spot for now. Charles Leclerc 4th. Piastri 5th. And Isaac Hadjar in 6th spot. Hulkenberg, Ocon, Hamilton also sitting inside of the point scoring places for now. Kimi Antonelli is 11th and does have a 5-second penalty to his name. Does Kimi Antonelli, but has also already pitted earlier on in the Grand Prix. Franco Colapinto running in 12th. And everyone behind Colapinto has already stopped. In fact, very early on, Yuki Tsunoda stopped on the 1st lap of the race. Hamilton, 0.473 seconds behind Esteban Ocon. Closing into the Haas car. And Antonelli not very happy about the penalty. The Mercedes team investigating it from their side. Antonelli probably didn't even notice. It's the most marginal of jump starts if I've ever seen one. Like, I could tell from the replay, it just looked like he got a bad start more than a jump start. Didn't gain any kind of advantage, did Kimi Antonelli. but has been given that 5-second penalty. The problem is that kind of thing is automated. Like, they'll see the exact time that Antonelli started moving because it'll come up on his dash. And then they'll see the exact time that the lights dropped, and they'll be able to just compare those two things, right? So to the stewards, it should be fairly cut and dry. Hamilton closing into the back of Esteban Ocon this time around, down towards turn 1. Is the Ferrari going to be able to make a move? Decides against it. Hamilton continues on behind Esteban Ocon for now, but surely will be able to get past that Haas car. And Ocon's pace has really fallen off of it. Hamilton then has Hulkenberg. The gap ahead, though, fairly chunky. 2 seconds between Hulkenberg and Ocon, so bit of a gap to run into for Hamilton if he can't get this move done. Be much better than sitting inside of this dirty air. Verstappen still leads Lando Norris 2.7 seconds adrift. George Russell has now caught the back of Isaac Hadjar. George Russell, I imagine, was hoping some of these cars would have pitted, and it's a 5-second time penalty for Alex Albon for that collision with Lewis Hamilton. Just got it all wrong, did Alex Albon at that point. The defense was a little bit sloppy. I think it just misjudged where he was positioning his car, and Isaac Hadjar is going to box, which is absolute dream to George Russell's ears, although Russell might be able to get past the racing bulls down towards turn 14 anyway, and he does indeed. George Russell gets that position done, the fresher tyres on the Mercedes car, and up into 6th place once again, as Isaac Hadjar is about to move into the pits anyway. So Russell now, Piastri ahead, but a nice little gap, 3.7 seconds the gap between Piastri and Russell. So Russell, some nice clean air to run into. Keep an eye on that gap between Lando Norris and George Russell as well. Also, George Russell and Max Verstappen. So if George Russell can get himself within that 22-second margin, could also be leading this race, George Russell. The fresher tyres going onto Max Verstappen's car, but he'll have to get in front of George Russell in front. And Lewis Hamilton has indeed finally got past Esteban Ocon as well. We were keeping tabs on that battle between those two. Hamilton now up into 8th place. Esteban Ocon down into 9th. And surely those medium tyres of Esteban Ocon's car need swapping sometime soon. Really struggling is Esteban Ocon for the pace of the rest of the cars around him. Nico Hulkenberg continuing on in 7th spot. And Hulkenberg started on the hard compound tyre, so it's going to go a lot longer than the rest of the cars around him. Lewis Hamilton also starting on the hard compound tyre as well. Charles Leclerc now catching up to the back of his old teammate Carlos Sainz. Leclerc has been on an absolute tear throughout this race, and Leclerc has now closed the gap to the Williams car ahead as well, within half a second of him. So we'll pick up that battle between those two. Carlos Sainz defending a possible podium position. Of course, George Russell has pitted, so has sort of inherited it for now, as Oscar Piastri also pits. Piastri, our championship contender, into the pits for McLaren. McLaren a very solid 2.7 seconds stop. A little bit of a wobble as he gets underway. And Oscar Piastri out of the pits then. And I think Piastri's going to come out behind Antonelli, but with a little bit of a gap to run into. And it's going to be 10th place for Oscar Piastri for now. And Charles Leclerc really under the rear wing of Carlos Sainz now. Surely is going to try and make a move. They're battling through turn 9 and turn 10 at the moment. Sorry, turn 8 and turn 9. Turn 10 now coming up for Charles Leclerc. And through 11, just right on the rear wing of Carlos Sainz. Needs to close the gap. So important that you get turn 12 right, because Carlos Sainz tries to escape. Charles Leclerc now coming at him. Will get that toe all the way down, plus the DRS once you get to turn 13. The detection point is there. Opening up that rear wing of the Ferrari car. Carlos Sainz tries to maneuver himself to move out of the way. And Charles Leclerc is going to try and go up the inside. Carlos Sainz is going to box at the end of this lap anyway. And Charles Leclerc decides against the move for now. as Carlos Sainz does peel into the pits, and so does Lando Norris. Lando Norris into the pits for McLaren. Carlos Sainz into the pits for Williams as well. Lando Norris then is going to have some fresh tyres, but is going to be slightly behind George Russell. Russell just coming around that turn 1, turn 2 complex. Lando Norris coming out of the end of the pit lane. So Lando Norris comes out in what is now 4th place as Charles Leclerc continues ahead, but will soon be 3rd once again, depending on where Max Verstappen slots into this. And actually, Lando Norris on the hard compound tyre. The tyres have come out of the tyre blankets. Oh, no, sorry. This is Oscar Piastri. I thought that was Lando Norris. Oscar Piastri making a move on Carlos Sainz, as Carlos Sainz has come out of the pits and is on slightly colder hard compound tyres. So Sainz is overtaken by Piastri now. That's an interesting one. So Piastri ahead of Carlos Sainz out on track now. It's Fernando Alonso fighting with Yuki Tsunoda. Fernando Alonso round the outside. What a move from Fernando Alonso to move up into 12th place. The battle with him and Franco Colapinto. Alonso now at the lead of that little pack. Alonso, Colapinto, Tsunoda, Behrman. And Esteban Ocon now fighting with Kimi Antonelli. Antonelli is swapped onto the hard compound tyre at the start of this Grand Prix, is now ahead of Oscar Piastri. Of course, Piastri is going to have much, much fresher hard compound tyres, but even so, Antonelli is running ahead of Oscar. Antonelli with a 5-second penalty. Now fighting with Esteban Ocon. George Russell and Lando Norris, the front runners that have pitted so far. Was it a bad pit stop for Carlos Sainz? He seems to have lost quite a considerable amount of time. Maybe it was just the pace of the Williams car before the pit stop, possibly. Keeping Charles Leclerc at bay, though, for at least a little while. Lando Norris. Am I trying to do my race or am I trying to go forwards? And Lando Norris being told on the radio, we want better tyres than Russell at the end. So they don't think they're going to be able to battle with George Russell until right at the end of this Grand Prix. So they're basically telling Lando Norris there to hold on to his tyres. They're thinking plan B at McLaren for Lando Norris as Charles Leclerc comes into the pits for Ferrari. 2.7 second stop for Charles Leclerc. Let's keep an eye on where he's going to come out. Antonelli and Ocon now making their way around. Piastri and Sainz just coming up. Leclerc had managed to make his way past Piastri and Sainz. I think he's going to come out between the two of them. So Charles Leclerc then has come out just behind Oscar Piastri and is going to have to move past the McLaren once again. We have hit the halfway point of this Grand Prix. 25 laps about to be completed by Max Verstappen. 25 laps left to go. Just awkwardly, though, for Max Verstappen, George Russell is 21 seconds adrift. Lando Norris, 24. Max Verstappen is going to come into the pits then. If they get it right, they should come out just ahead of George Russell. It's about 20 seconds. But if it jumps to sort of 22 seconds, George Russell is absolutely throwing it about as well. Knows that Max Verstappen is now pitting and George Russell going for track position at this point in the Grand Prix. Oh, and he's a little bit long as Max Verstappen. It's a 3-second stop. Let's see then. George Russell is coming around turn 17. Verstappen making his way to the end of the pits. And Verstappen is just about going to be leading this race still, but it's going to be very tight indeed. And Verstappen does come out of the pits ahead of Russell. Russell's going to be very close. And actually, Max Verstappen's going to be a little bit careful because he's on that colder hard compound tyre. George Russell's tyre is already up to temperature. And Russell's going to be looking right at the rear wing of Max Verstappen. And George Russell, 1.2 seconds adrift, isn't quite able to close into Max Verstappen at this point. So it is Verstappen, Russell, Norris. It's remained where it is, even throughout the pit stops. And Verstappen still leading. Hulkenberg now the best of the rest in fourth spot. Yet to have pitted, though. Hulkenberg and Hamilton yet to have stopped. Kimi Antonelli has, though. And this is the thing from Antonelli and Mercedes. Pitted really early on with Kimi Antonelli onto the hard compound tyre. Has already stopped as Kimi Antonelli. Currently in 6th place. Esteban Ocon hasn't stopped yet in 7th. No idea why, because that Haas car has got absolutely no pace left in it. And those medium tyres, they've been really struggling. So I'm not sure what they're doing with Esteban Ocon down at Haas, if I'm honest. But then Piastri has stopped. Leclerc has stopped. So they'll move positions back up once again once Ocon does indeed pit. Hulkenberg and Hamilton the same. So Piastri effectively running in 5th place. And Albon has got that penalty then. That collision with Lewis Hamilton. It is a penalty confirmed for Alex Albon. It's a 5-second time penalty. So Albon with a 5-second time penalty. Antonelli with a 5-second time penalty as well so far in this Grand Prix. Max Verstappen now continues on. Verstappen actually now getting back up to 2 seconds in the lead of this Grand Prix. So Verstappen looking very comfortable at the front of this pack. Lando Norris was told on the radio, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen fairly late on in this Grand Prix. So Lando Norris sitting in 3rd and giving himself a bit of a gap to George Russell ahead, actually, a 3.5-second gap. Holding on to those hard compound tyres, possibly inside of the McLaren car. Hulkenberg and Hamilton still continuing on the hard compound tyre behind. Going to have to stop at some point, though. It'd be interesting to see when Hulkenberg does decide to make that maneuver. He is 5 seconds adrift of Lando Norris anyway, so Hulkenberg is going to fall back 20 seconds from there, 10 seconds off the lead. So where's Hulkenberg going to come out? He's going to come out between Hadjar and Alonso at this point if he were to pit now. Hamilton the same. Max Verstappen sets another fastest lap of the race, a 1:35 dead from Verstappen. So 2 seconds ahead still, Verstappen from Russell. Here comes Esteban Ocon finally pits. And that puts Isaac Hadjar back up into the point scoring places. Ocon is going to fall between Behrman and Gasly, I want to say. Yeah, between Behrman and Gasly. Esteban Ocon is going to come out. Yuki Tsunoda also comes in for a second stop in this race. Still just hasn't got the pace, Yuki Tsunoda. You know, you look at Kimi Antonelli, for instance, who pitted similar idea, went really early on the pit stop. Antonelli currently running behind Lewis Hamilton. Tsunoda went really early on the pit stop and still was just in a malaise of midfield cars towards the back end of the pack. Oh, that's an interesting question. They're wondering if Antonelli can go to the end. And Zach Brown saying he'd be surprised if Kimi Antonelli could make it all the way to the end of the Grand Prix. I'd also be fairly surprised, to be fair, if he could make it all the way to the end on the same tyres he started the race with. But never say never when it comes to Kimi Antonelli. Oscar Piastri puts in another decent lap, though. Is actually closing in on the back of Kimi Antonelli fairly quickly, is Oscar Piastri. Is in 7th place at the moment. Will actually move up into 4th spot, Oscar Piastri, if he can deal with Kimi Antonelli, because Hülkenberg and Hamilton have yet to have stopped. So Piastri would be sitting just 1 place behind his teammate, but still a considerable time gap between the two of them. Piastri 19 seconds off the lead, Norris only 5 seconds off the lead. So still a 12-second gap between the two. Even more so. 14-second gap between the two. Can't do maths. Too early in the morning. Pit window now open for those hard compound tyre runners. Started the race on them, looking at Hülkenberg and Hamilton and possibly even Antonelli to swap those hard compound tyres out for something different. Unless Antonelli is going for the absolute wonder shot of trying to do an entire race on one set of tyres. As a rookie as well, on a circuit that is tricky to nail, as Lewis Hamilton does indeed pit. So Hamilton's going to pit. It's going to move Piastri and Leclerc and Sainz back up ahead of him. Let's see where Hamilton comes out. Oh, it's not an amazing stop from Ferrari, 3.1 seconds. Here comes Isaac Hadjar around turn 17. I think he's going to have the advantage over Hamilton. Does indeed fairly comfortably. Needs to get out in front of Fernando Alonso, though. Think will just about do it. Hamilton's going to have quite a nice little gap to run into. Hamilton ahead of Fernando Alonso. So still inside of the point scoring places. But quite far adrift of Isaac Hadjar. Let's see what kind of pace Lewis Hamilton can do. Hamilton coming to turn 5 now. Isaac Hadjar just coming around turn 7 and 8. So that's the gap Hamilton has got ahead of him. Alonso and Behrman still battling it out behind in 11th and 12th spot. We know that Hülkenberg needs to pit as well. Hülkenberg will come out in a similar place to Hamilton. Was running ahead of the Ferrari before the stop. So Hülkenberg surely going to cover off Hamilton here by coming out and pitting at the end of this lap. That means Antonelli is going to move up into 4th spot. Oscar Piastri, though, 3.5 seconds behind the Italian and closing that gap continually. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz also not leaving Oscar Piastri by himself. A little bit of a gap to Charles Leclerc, 2.5 seconds, but Leclerc looking very quick on the last lap as Piastri then puts in the fastest lap of anybody, and Hülkenberg does indeed box. So Hülkenberg looking at Isaac Hadjar, much swifter stop from Hülkenberg required than the Ferrari stop for Hamilton. Hülkenberg still stationary. And Hülkenberg out of the pits and is going to be still ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton actually under pressure from Fernando Alonso behind. Hamilton not quite able to get those medium tyres up to temperature very quickly. Alonso already with those hard compound tyres ready and racing. And Hülkenberg is indeed out, and 9th place for Nico Hülkenberg. So there's a couple of points up for grabs there for the Stakes Sauber man this weekend. Qualified in 11th, has done very well indeed to not get himself involved in some of the bashes and bumps that happened at the beginning of the Grand Prix. Liam Lawson, the biggest loser, started inside of the point scoring places, was best of the rest, other than Carlos Sainz. And now down in 18th place is Liam Lawson. Big damage done to that Racing Bulls car, it feels like, at the beginning of this Grand Prix. Verstappen now sets a fastest lap, rebutted by Lando Norris, who sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix so far. Norris 2 seconds adrift of George Russell. It's just closing that gap once again. And here comes Ollie Behrman on Fernando Alonso. Moves to the left-hand side of the track down to turn 14. Has the inside line. And the number 87 car moves past the number 14. Ollie Behrman up into 11th spot then. You never know. That could play into his advantage. Kimi Antonelli, where is he? 16 seconds off the lead. Add 20 to that. 36 seconds. So Antonelli, even if Antonelli pits, should come out in front of Ollie Behrman. And also in front of Lewis Hamilton. So Antonelli, I would imagine it depends what he's going to do. If they are going to try and go all the way to the end of this Grand Prix on those tyres, then fair enough. Like, it's a gamble nonetheless. But Antonelli could pit here and still come out between Hülkenberg and Hamilton at this point. If he loses another couple of laps worth of lap time where he's doing a 135.7, then that will certainly not happen. Lando Norris absolutely flying right now to try and catch up to the back of George Russell. Just taking 0.8 of a second out of George. Has George just killed his tyres, or has that steering problem come back for George Russell? He did say that the steering was feeling heavy once again earlier on in this Grand Prix. Has that just gotten worse? And now George Russell on the radio. George Russell saying, Lando Norris is going to be quick. I'll try my best to defend from him, but I'm not going to do anything stupid and risk this podium. I mean, you've got to give Lando credit here. Lando has just absolutely turned on the gas. George Russell on the radio, knowing exactly what's sort of coming. Seeing the McLaren car come into the rear wing mirror. Lando, of course, doesn't want to cook those tyres in the dirty air behind George Russell, but at the same time, will know that there is an opportunity to get beyond George Russell and possibly even catch up to Verstappen for the lead. There's enough laps left in this Grand Prix. If he can get past Russell, there's a 4-second gap. Would need to put in some very, very solid lap times. But not quite. Norris on the radio. Overtake. We're going to get Max, is the radio message for Lando Norris. So Norris has given the thumbs up to go for the overtake. And this could be a very defining moment in Lando Norris's Las Vegas Grand Prix and Lando Norris's championship battle. If he can get himself past George Russell, it's another 3 points in his pocket compared to Oscar Piastri. Would be 29 points ahead of his teammate at the end of this Grand Prix if it stays as it is. He is closing in, though. Could be a 32-point gap to Piastri, which is a considerable chunk. 32 points. Just 1 point adrift of a win and sprint win, which is what Piastri would need. And DRS is open for Lando Norris. Lando Norris pulls to the right-hand side of the track. And Lando Norris moves around the outside of George Russell. Russell doesn't put up too much of a fight, as he said on the radio. Just does not have the pace of Lando Norris. And now Norris just over 4 seconds, nearly 5 seconds, actually, the gap between Verstappen and Norris now. But 16 laps left to run. Lando Norris, he's got an opportunity here. It's not over until it's over. Verstappen, though, leading this Grand Prix, has been since the start of it. Continues on in first place. Let's see what kind of pace Verstappen can muster up compared to Lando. George Russell just not looking anywhere near as comfortable as he did on the medium compound tyre earlier on in the Grand Prix. Antonelli, though, looking pretty good on the hards. I think that's the thing. They must have looked at Antonelli on the hards and gone, he's actually got pretty decent pace, but George Russell hasn't quite had the pace that maybe Antonelli had. Oscar Piastri also closing into the back of Kimi Antonelli. Antonelli's still not coming in for a pit stop on those hard compound tyres that he swapped onto at the start of the race. Verstappen on the radio. And Lando has been told to come and get you, is the rebuttal from Red Bull's GP. Verstappen aware then that Lando Norris has got good pace. Can Verstappen up his pace to just match Lando and keep him at arm's length? Let's have a look at the lap times. As Lando Norris about to come over at the start-finish line. It is the fastest lap from Lando Norris and a couple of tenths. Again, going in Lando Norris's favour. So Verstappen a 134.6, Lando Norris a 134.4. It's going to be a big gap to come past, though. As Lando Norris now also has to deal with the back marker there of Alex Albon's Williams. Gets past him now. George Russell also making his way past the Williams car of Alex Albon. And now a lap down in that Williams car. It's been a nightmare weekend for Alex Albon, hasn't it? Had the pace, looked really, really swift. Saw that the Williams had pace in qualifying. Carlos Sainz starting on the second row of the grid. But Albon with that mistake, a crash in qualifying, now a tough race and a penalty given to him. It's just all fallen apart for the Thai driver. On board with Oscar Piastri as he's catching up to the back of Kimi Antonelli. Not quite within DRS range of the Mercedes car as of yet. But as soon as you get in there, you start to lose a little bit of the grip. Your tyres start to overheat that a little bit more. And Piastri will know that he needs to get past Antonelli sooner rather than later. And again, gain some points. Every point is absolutely crucial at this point in the Grand Prix and this point in the championship battle. Alex Albon pits. It's going to be a fourth pit stop for Alex Albon. Could that be a coming in to retire the car possibly from Williams? Albon likely to join Bortoleto and Stroll, I think. And yeah, it does indeed. Albon comes to a stop in the pits. And Albon is going to be out of this race. As I just mentioned before, it really just hasn't been his weekend. When you look at the pace that the Williams car could have had. Still, I think is he still the lap record holder here, Alex Albon? Certainly was. During a race, anyway, from last year's Las Vegas Grand Prix. Might have fallen this weekend. Haven't been paying attention to that. But Albon, super quick. And Kimi Antonelli holding on to fourth place. Piastri still closing in. Now within DRS range, Oscar Piastri. We're watching the McLaren car going down towards turn 14. Has the DRS open. Is he going to go for a move this time around on the Italian driver? Can't this time now. So Piastri holds on and maybe gives it one more lap, or possibly even looking for a move down in towards turn 1. Lando Norris has been told to catch the back of Max Verstappen. Verstappen has certainly upped the temperature inside of his Red Bull car as well. Lando Norris 5.6 seconds adrift. It's looking like a fairly easy run to the flag for for Max Verstappen now in first place. Would gain 7 points on Lando Norris. Still 49 points between them at this very moment. So that would drop down to 42. Never say never. Needs, a DNF at a bit, really, for Lando Norris. But Max Verstappen certainly capable of winning all three of these final races. Piastri closing in once again then. Look at them as they come through this middle sector. Piastri closer than he was last time. Half a second between Piastri and Antonelli. Charles Leclerc also there behind as well in the Ferrari car. And here we are then. Kimi Antonelli ahead. And the problem is with Kimi Antonelli now is those tyres are going to be absolutely screaming. Moves to the outside of the track. Kimi Antonelli's going to try his best to defend it. Oh, a little bit of a drift almost from Oscar Piastri. And Antonelli is able to hold on to that position. The problem that Piastri is going to have is Charles Leclerc is now smelling blood ahead. Can Charles Leclerc make a move down towards turn 1? Possibly. Not this time around. Piastri able to hold on just about enough. But Piastri was a little bit sideways through turn 14. Just opened the possibility for Charles Leclerc to close into the back of Piastri. Piastri able to hold on to it for now, though. And Charles Leclerc causing issues for Piastri. Piastri can't just go for a maneuver on Antonelli without thinking about the fact that Charles Leclerc is right there just in case. And Kimi Antonelli now with an absolute nightmare task of trying to keep Piastri and Leclerc at bay. I mean, the only thing running in Antonelli's favour here is the fact that they are fighting one another as well, Piastri and Leclerc. So Piastri has to keep an eye on where Charles is and can't go for a crazy move up the inside or round the outside just in case Charles Leclerc is also opportunistic. Gets a better run out of the chicane down towards, say, turn 1. Here is Piastri again then. DRS open. Looks at the back of the Italian's car once more. Decides against it this time around. Charles Leclerc also closing into the back of the Papaya car. Verstappen has continued on. Fastest lap still with Max Verstappen. Another fast lap for him. A 134.1. Now nearly 6 seconds ahead of Lando Norris. And I think Norris might have given up the ghost here. Max Verstappen just has the pace and has the Red Bull car in that sweet spot. And when Verstappen is on form like this, there is no catching him, is there? He has got the fresher hard compound tyres and looking very solid indeed. Verstappen's going to win this Grand Prix. Lando Norris then second, George Russell third. It's the battle for 4th place that is currently still underway with 10 laps left to go. Piastri and Antonelli fighting for it. Charles Leclerc waiting in the wings. 4th, 5th and 6th within 2 seconds of one another. Carlos Sainz then in 7th spot for Williams. And considering where he started the race, you could argue maybe a little bit disappointing, but that is a very solid point scoring return for Carlos Sainz, finishing best of the rest and nearly 10 seconds ahead of the next best car. Isaac Hadjar 8.5 seconds behind the Williams. Here comes Piastri once again then. Just keeping an eye on these cars every time they come around turn 12. Piastri not close enough again though. And Antonelli still holding this position. I'll tell you what, we were talking about the possibility of Antonelli pitting and maybe coming out just ahead of Hamilton and in and around where Hülkenberg is. But actually, Antonelli is absolutely doing the job that he needs to do here. He's going all the way to the end, it feels like, on these hard compound tyres. Pitted on lap 2 of this Grand Prix. For those tyres did Kimi Antonelli. Carlos Sainz is closing the gap as well, though. 3.4 seconds behind. But Antonelli holding Piastri at bay for now. It's just whether those hard compound tyres are going to fall off an absolute cliff for Kimi Antonelli at some point. I think especially if Antonelli falls behind Piastri here and is then in the dirty air of the McLaren car, then it becomes a real sort of task for Antonelli. At the moment, he's got a lovely bit of clean air to run into because George Russell is 10 seconds ahead. So it's basically clean air for Antonelli. But as soon as he drops behind the McLaren, it's then another problem. Well, if he drops behind the McLaren, Oscar Piastri not able to get around at the minute. Kimi Antonelli using his battery to defend from Piastri. Piastri's going to have that DRS, though. Piastri a little bit closer than he was last time. Antonelli was actually a bit quicker through the middle sector, though. Piastri has DRS once again, but it doesn't look like Piastri's going to make a move this time. Piastri isn't close enough again. This is the thing for Piastri. The pressure is on. He needs to make this move. He's desperate to get by, as Lando Norris then sets fastest lap of the Grand Prix, but is still nearly 6 seconds adrift of Max Verstappen at the front of it. So unless he can find a second a lap, he is going to be nowhere close to Verstappen by the end of this one. George Russell in 3rd place still. Antonelli, this guy, in 4th. Piastri with DRS closes into the back of Antonelli towards turn 5, but not close enough still. Desperate to get past the Italian. Needs to get it done before lap 50. It's not going to matter too much whether he does it now or later. But Kimi Antonelli is doing a very, very solid job. Just Charles Leclerc is hoping that Piastri can get it done sooner rather than later. So is Carlos Sainz, who is closing into the back of Kimi Antonelli's car as well. Kimi Antonelli still in 4th then. Piastri coming around turn 12. Doesn't seem as close as he was that time he went for the opportunity, though, does Piastri? Just seems like he's not quite there in the middle sector. Piastri, DRS once again, but not within striking distance of Kimi Antonelli in any way. I think Piastri might be under or having a little bit of problem here. Could be a weird one. Oh, come on, Piastri. You need to do this. This is very much important for the title. If we look at the championship now, we might as well. Lando Norris would be on 408 points. Oh, let me get out for myself. 408 points. Piastri only on 376. So would finally have that big gap, and that gap bigger than a win. So even if Lando Norris DNFs in Qatar during the Grand Prix and Piastri wins it, Lando Norris would still be leading the championship going into the final race of the season. Verstappen, 366, actually only 10 points adrift of Piastri. So Piastri could fall to even 3rd place in the standings after leading it for so long between Saudi Arabia and Mexico. Oh. And Lando Norris. Let's do whatever we got to do. And Lando Norris being told over the radio, just do more. Not really overly helpful, I would say. George Russell's going to be on 291. Charles Leclerc 222. But the really important one is Verstappen will be within 10 points of Piastri. And also, what, 34 plus 8, 42 points of Lando Norris at the top of the standing. So still a 42-point gap. Red Bull would still be ahead of Ferrari in the constructor standings as well. Goodness me. Piastri still behind Antonelli, and actually, again, just not even within striking range. Needs to be within sort of 0.6 of a second, really, coming out of turn 12, but it's more like 8 to 9 tenths of a second more often than not. Verstappen actually catching the back of Franco Colapinto now. Some back markers coming up for him. Will we see? I don't know. Verstappen hit by Colapinto. Open up the door for Lando Norris to win this Grand Prix. I wouldn't say no. Antonelli's pace has been very, very solid. Antonelli, remember, does have a 5-second penalty. So maybe Piastri just thinking, Is it even worth me going for the overtake? Just deciding against it. The 5-second penalty is going to play into his favor anyway. Carlos Sainz, I imagine, is also within 5 seconds. I don't know, actually. It's pretty close. Antonelli would either finish just in front of Carlos Sainz or just behind, depending on what kind of lap times Carlos Sainz can put in over the next couple of laps. So Antonelli guaranteed to at least finish 7th, even with a 5-second penalty. Piastri guaranteed to move ahead of him because he's just behind him. So I kind of forgot about that 5-second penalty for Kimi Antonelli, and that's maybe why Oscar Piastri has just decided, I don't need to do this overtake. Like, doesn't actually help me in any way and could cause a problem for Piastri with Leclerc behind. So this could be a bit of a tactical maneuver from Oscar Piastri here. Hadjar, Hulkenberg, and Hamilton looking like the final point scoring places. They are miles adrift from one another, though. Hadjar 10 seconds behind Sainz, another 6 seconds to Hulkenberg in 9th, and another 7, nearly 8 seconds to Hamilton in 10th. So there's some big gaps at the back of the points. Esteban Ocon and Ollie Behrman just outside of the points for Haas in 11th and 12th. Fernando Alonso 13th. Gasly 14th. Tsunoda 15th. Lawson in 16th. And Franco Colapinto just about to be overtaken by Max Verstappen to be lapped in this Grand Prix. Albon, Bortoletto, and Lance Stroll out of the race. Antonelli still in 4th spot. I think Piastri is just sitting behind him, I'll be honest. I think he's decided that it's not worth the opportunity. Like, he went for that overtaking maneuver, had a bit of a wobble, and then actually nearly opened the door to Charles Leclerc. So I think it's just gone, you know what? I'm not bothered. I'm just going to sit about a second behind Antonelli. I'm going to gain that position anyway. Although now he's outside of DRS range as Oscar Piastri. That is the worry. Maybe he's burned through those hard compound tyres. I mean, Kimi Antonelli's hard compound tyres are 43 laps old, so surely can't have burned through them as much as Antonelli has. But Piastri now will not have DRS down towards turn 14, and Charles Leclerc will. So Leclerc now looking at the back of Oscar Piastri's car. And that's the other thing Piastri just needs to be a little bit careful of, is where Charles Leclerc is in all of this. Carlos Sainz also trying to gain on the back of this pack of 3. Carlos Sainz would have been hoping that Piastri put up a bit more of a fight, because that would have helped him out in closing the gap to the Mercedes car ahead. Possible place gained for him once that 5-second penalty does get applied to Kimi Antonelli's car. Here we are then. Yeah, that is the other thing. That's a good point, actually, that Ted is making. George Russell's lap times, you look at them in comparison to Piastri's possible lap times, and you go, could Piastri have actually caught up to the back of George Russell in all of this? You know, Russell is now 11 seconds adrift of the back of Lando Norris. Russell has been really struggling inside of that car. So had Piastri gotten past Antonelli with a little bit more vigor, and had Piastri sort of gone for a move earlier, was there a possibility of fighting George Russell for 3rd place? We'll never know, because we'll never know what kind of pace Piastri would have had in that clean air, but George Russell is struggling inside of that Mercedes car. We know he's got that little bit of a problem with his steering as well. But Piastri sitting behind. Charles Leclerc's kind of giving it up a little bit as well. The gaps between those cars just elongating a touch. Carlos Sainz is not going to be within that 5 seconds of Kimi Antonelli. So Antonelli's going to drop back to 6th place. Carlos Sainz looking like 7th is going to be the best that he can muster. 8th place for Isaac Hadjar, 9th place for Nico Hulkenberg, and 10th place for Lewis Hamilton. So that looks like the point scoring places are pretty much settled. Unless there is some absolute chaos at the end here. Ocon and Behrman, 11th and 12th, just outside. Alonso, Tsunoda, Gasly, Lawson, and Colapinto dropping out as well. Well, dropping out of the points, sorry. Not out of the race. Albon, Bortoleto, and Stroll, the 3 drivers that we've had retire from the Grand Prix. Ooh. Been up since 3 a.m. I think I'm getting to the stage where I'm just hallucinating things at this point. Lando Norris, 12 seconds adrift. Max Verstappen turning on the afterburners inside of the Red Bull car. Lando Norris possibly with some kind of little issue or holding onto the engine of that car, knowing that there's no threat from behind. So Lando has just dropped off the pace pretty considerably. Max Verstappen continuing on. In fact, Lando Norris, a 137.7. That is a real off the pace from Lando Norris. I mean, it's not an issue at this moment, but he is absolutely giving time to George Russell. And this is the thing again, if Piastri would have been able to get past Antonelli earlier and possibly even fight with George Russell, now that Lando Norris has got a problem, could Piastri have even finished in front of Lando Norris had he gone for that move on Antonelli rather than playing the reserved role in this? I don't know. Think Lando's just playing it safe? Do you think? Like this, there's safe and then there's 4 seconds off the pace. Like, wow. Okay. Race leader Max Verstappen crosses the line to start the final lap of the race. He's only got a 16-second gap to 2nd place, so should be all good. Here we go then. Lando Norris has a problem and has got 1 more lap left. 17 seconds adrift. George Russell, 5 seconds behind. Should be okay for Lando Norris, but is absolutely hemorrhaging lap time. And I think he's maybe saving fuel inside of that McLaren car. There possibly was an issue with the fuel sensor maybe, and they haven't held on to enough fuel. That could be absolutely disastrous if Lando Norris gets disqualified from this Grand Prix for not having enough fuel left in the car. We've seen it before. It is a slam dunk disqualification if you don't have enough fuel inside of the car to give over to the FIA at the end of the Grand Prix. So Lando Norris maybe taking it very easy indeed over the last few laps. Has been 4 seconds off the pace, so very, very easy. As Max Verstappen comes around the final couple of corners, started on the front row, moved to the 1st place in the 1st corner, and has led every single lap since. It's another masterclass from Max Verstappen inside of that Red Bull car, and another win to his name. As he continues on in his championship challenge. The man leading the championship, though, Lando Norris, now coming around turn 16. George Russell is right there behind Lando Norris. Could have been very, very different had Lando Norris just lost a couple more seconds or even a couple more laps to that issue. Kimi Antonelli drops to only 5th place in Mercedes' car. That was a hell of a tactic from Kimi Antonelli and Mercedes to go all the way on those hard compound tires. 48 laps completed, Kimi Antonelli on those hard compound tires, and still outdid Charles Leclerc's Ferrari, who finished up 6th. Carlos Sainz came home in 7th place. And then it's going to be Hadjar, Hulkenberg, and Hamilton inside of the points scoring positions. Ocon, Behrman, Alonso, Tsunoda, Gasly, Lawson, and Colapinto finished the race outside of the points, with Lawson and Colapinto a lap down on the leaders. And then Albon, Bortoleto, and Stroll, the 3 drivers, to drop out of this Grand Prix. Well. There we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Let's have a little look at the championship standings. Just before we go, Lando Norris gains 18 points, as we saw before. And Lando Norris moves up to 408. Oscar Piastri then, 12 points for him, 30 points adrift. 30 points adrift. He's 30 points adrift once we come to the end of the Qatar Grand Prix. Lando Norris will be the 2025 world champion. Piastri needs next weekend to be his weekend. 30 points with 2 races and a sprint to go. Seems almost impossible, doesn't it? 42 points then to Max Verstappen in 3rd place. He's on 366, sorry, with 25 points gained this weekend in Vegas. 15 points for George Russell, gives them 291. But there's more important for them in terms of the constructors. They gained 25 points, 423 for Mercedes. If you look down at Ferrari now in 4th place, they're 20 points adrift of Red Bull. Ferrari. Looking very comfortable indeed for Mercedes to take 2nd place in the constructor standings. And considering it should have been a real battle between Mercedes and Ferrari, that's very disappointing for the Scuderia. The fact that they could finish 4th as well behind Red Bull, who only have 1 driver, is pretty damning for Ferrari. 6 points for Williams, though. They've basically consolidated that 5th place finish. Racing Bulls also gain another 4 points on their rivals. Kick Sauber gaining 2 points and closing to within 6 points of Haas ahead in 8th place. So it's all to play for in the midfield battle from Racing Bulls down to Kick Sauber. Anything could happen. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Thank you guys for watching. I'll be live in about 5-10 minutes or so for members only for the post-race review. And then I'll be going back to bed. So have a lovely sleep, everybody. And I will see you, if not before, next weekend for the Qatar Grand Prix weekend. We're live for qualifying, sprint race, and of course the full Grand Prix. So a bumper weekend of live streams. I will see you then.